This is part 2 of the week 1. So in the previous movie, I already introduced to you about the concept of microcontroller. So today we will go to the detail of the hardware architecture of the microcontroller. So this is the basic block of the big 16F877 where we will study, and inside you can see that there are many hardware architectures. So we will discuss about this. First one is the architecture of the overall architecture of the microcontroller. And previously I already discussed with you the bus, right? So in our big the bus is the bi-directions. That means that it can two ways, the input and output. So but previously the microcontroller in is developed in the classical way. This is the von Neumann architecture. That means they just have one RAM and ROM block. So when we use the bus to exchange the data, so we cannot how to say occur the same time. That means we will access the RAM and then access the ROM at the same time. We will have to access serially. But nowadays the RAM and the ROM already separated in the two blocks, so we can access them at the same time. So this is the hardware architecture. And this is the when you read the datasheet of the microcontroller, you will see the diagram, the block like this. Okay. Okay, the next one is the bus. Okay, really I already discussed with you what is the bus, right? So bus is just the collection of the wire, electrical wires. So when we collect the number of bus into one, so this called a bus. Okay, so we can have the A bus or 16 bus. So that means this bus have A Y or 16 Ys. Okay, and the bus have two types. That's the address bus and the data bus. So the address bus is for memory access, right? For memory addressing. So it transmit the address from the CPU to the memory. Okay, and the data bus is the wire of data, right? So our PIC is PIC 16A77. That means we have the A bit, right? A bit. So now if someone asks you, okay, you heard that some chips is 8 bit, 16 bit or 32 bits. So what does it mean? So can you answer these questions? Okay, so the next one is the CPU. Okay, the CPU. And in our microcontroller PIC just have the 35 instruction. That means 35 command. So it's very small amount of instruction, right? Commands that you can study, right? Just need 35 command, right? And the execution time lasts 4 clock. Okay, so that means example we use the crystal 20 megahertz. So it must be divided by 4. That means 5 megahertz. Okay, 5 megahertz. It is different from another chip, right? When you input 20 megahertz, it will work as 20 megahertz, but in the microcontroller PIC, it will divide by 4. So remember about this, because it will relate it to the timer calculations. Okay, the next one is the ROM. The ROM. So the ROM, what is the ROM mean? ROM, that means you sell when you write the program. So when you sell it, so it will sell into the ROM. It will translate to the computer code, and then it will sell in the ROM. And the next one is the FROM. So the FROM is also one kind of ROM, but okay, but it can change. It can be changed during the operation of the microcontroller. And that means during the our chip working, right? During the time of working, some variable change, and then the EPROM can change. Okay. And next one is the RAM memory. RAM memory, and the RAM memory is used for storing the value, right, during the execution of the program. Okay, so what is the difference between EPROM and RAM? So summarize, we can say that the EPROM, that means when we sell the data, right, when suddenly the power is shut down, when you turn on the power again, this data is still available, right? It will be not be deleted. Okay, so this is the EPROM. Okay, and the RAM memory, this is the random access memory, and in our big microcontroller, this has two parts. This is the general purpose register and something like special function register. Okay, so this is the RAM memory block. Here you can see that here, right? So what is the general purpose register, right? So as I say, the RAM is have the function that save the data. So the general purpose register is for storing the data, right? Storing the data, right? So the SFR register, that means special function register. You see the it's something like the RAM memory, but different. It's that memory is connect physically to the external device, right? External device. Example, here we have 4 SFR register. This is, we call this is bank 0, bank 1, bank 2, and bank 3, right? And the address here it will relate it to the external port. Example 05H, it will connect to port A for the input and output function. For input and output function here, right? So we will discuss more about it in the next lecture. And the next one is the interrupt system. What do you mean interrupt? What does it mean interrupt? So we can think about this like interrupt. That means when the main flow working, right? If something happen, it will stop immediately. It will stop immediately, and then go to the function, the interrupt function. So this means the interrupt system. And the next one is timer. The timer. Okay, every controller have the timer inside. So the timer will produce the clock, and the pulse for the chip working. Okay. And To program for the microcontroller consists of the 3 steps. First, we write the code in the write the code, and then we combine the code into the hex file. This is the code of the computer, and then we upload the hex file into the microcontroller, and then it will work. And for the programming language, we have the many programming language like assembly language, C language, and basic language. So in these courses, we will study we will use the C language to program for the microchip. And we have 2 types of program. This is the classical one, and then modern. We can say that's modern types, right? So the classical one, that means we will access the register of the microcontroller. And in the modern types, we will use the library. We will use the library, and why we have 2 types of programming. The classical one is for working in the real industry. In the real industry, they will provide you 1 chip without the library, and then you have to develop the function for the chip. But for doing the project, so you need faster implement. So you use the C language, use the modern types, use the library to do your project. We have the application of the PIC is variety in the vehicle system, alarm system, home security, home automation, many types.